Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Shaun from Zoobox again. Yes, I got another Blu-ray review, Blu-ray and movie review. Well, kind of a movie. It's a mini series, actually. As you could probably tell by the title, I'm sure you were intrigued by the title, and that's why you clicked on this video. Otherwise, why would you be watching this? Who does that? Well, maybe it came on the next playing. Maybe this is a recommended video. That would be pretty exciting. You'd be enthralled, right? You'd be the mystery. I mean, it'd be taking over right now. But anyways, today I'm going to be discussing the remastered collector's edition of Stephen King's The Stand, the miniseries from 1994. Now, I saw this when it came out as a kid. I was 8 years old when this came out back in 1994, and it's always been kind of part of my life. I barely remember a time before I knew or had seen this miniseries. And then at some point, when I was older, I really liked The Stand. I liked the story. So I actually read the book. I still have this old copy, this old beat up copy I got from the Goodwill. It was beat up when I bought it. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you could go to Goodwill and you get a book for like a quarter. Nowadays, they charge not, retail prices, but, I don't need to pay $2 at a fucking Goodwill for a paperback. I mean, give me a break. A quarter, that's where it's at. So, yeah, this is my old copy of The Stand. So, I'm a fan. And I'm, in general, a Stephen King fan. So, that's where I'm coming from going into this. We're going to get into the actual show itself. But first, I just want to talk about kind of the particulars of this actual release. Because for a long time, if you don't know, this is directed by Mick Garris, a quote-unquote master of horror. He kind of just lumps himself in with those guys because, well, he's been around forever. He was kind of a background guy. He used to go and do marketing stuff for some of the studios, and he became very good friends with a lot of the big horror directors of the time. That kind of became his thing. Also became friends with Stephen King. I did a few other Stephen King adaptations. Right off the top of my head, I know he did Sleepwalkers, which was a Stephen King adaptation. And for years, people would ask him, people would bother him, when are we going to get The Stand on Blu-ray? When are we going to get a HD version of The Stand? Because for years, you could only get it on standard definition. It was put out on DVD a couple times. And, well, first it was on VHS, which I owned. I was a weird kid. I was part of that Columbia House. If you remember what that was, it was like a movie ordering thing. You get like a catalog and you'd go in and order it. And I worked as a kid, so I was able to buy things like that. And like I remember I would call them. They had no fucking idea that I was like 13 years old. And just having to give them the reference numbers for the products and stuff. And be like, you are 18, right? Oh, yeah, sure. I guess, I kind of, I matured a little early. I hit puberty a little early, so I could probably get away with that kind of stuff back in the day. But anyways, moving on. So back in the day, when you would have something that was made for television, what they would do is they would take the master that you shot on film. This was shot in 16 millimeter using a Panavision cameras and lenses, and they would put it on in standard definition tape. They would transfer the master to a standard definition tape. You would do all your editing and cutting on SD, and then that would be your final assembly. So there was no actually constructed film version of this for a long time. That's what he would tell people. He'd be like, the amount of effort CBS, now that owns it, it was ABC back in the day, but now CBS owns it. It would just cost tons of money, tons of time. Another series ran into this problem. A lot of people want or at least the niche fan base, they want the Star Trek shows in HD. Now, if you know, the original series was on HD pretty fast, pretty in the early days of Blu-ray. And the reason, because they shot everything on film, they cut everything on film. There was no transferring to standard def for broadcast. And so the next generation, Star Trek TNG, they did a massive project a few years back, basically having to go back to the original film negative, do scans of it, and then reassemble all of the episodes, do everything again, including special effects work. So if there's any like visual FX, they had to pretty much redo them. And that was kind of the same deal with The Stand for a long time. And Mick Garris was always like, no, they've never reached out to me. Nobody's ever reached out to me. Actually, I don't even think they reached out to him for this. I think he found out about it on Twitter. I follow Mick Garris. Mick Garris is a hack. Let me get something straight here. He's a hack director, and like I said, he has kind of included himself in a group of people, the quote-unquote masters of horror, which include John Carpenter, you know, among others. I'm drawing a blank right now. Stuart Gordon, and just a ton of other people, right? So he includes himself kind of in that group when he's really not one of them. He's not. He's he's a television director. That's kind of his bread and butter. Everything's kind of flat. Everything's kind of standard. It's not very cinematic. It looks like it should be on TV. And I don't remember where I was going with that. Over slagging Mick Garris off, but he's a very nice guy. That's what I was going to say. Seems like a very nice dude, and I have listened to his podcast, a podcast that I can't remember the name of. So I'm doing a really great job so far. Stick with me. Yeah, so they had to do that with the stand, and they kind of unceremoniously just decided to do it. I guess it was maybe the 25th anniversary, because this came out in September of last year. That's when it was actually released, and I waited a long time to pick it up. It came out at $30, and I was like, I don't even know if I like the fucking stand. The stand has just been part of my life, especially this miniseries. I've seen it so many times. I bought it on VHS when I was a kid for way too much money. I probably spent like $50 or $60 on this thing, on that box set. And then I got it on DVD a little bit later. I know it was floating around on Netflix at some time. I probably watched it when it was on Netflix. And but I don't know. I just have no sense of it. I can't almost be objective about it. It's so tied up in my life in this really bizarre way. But before we get into that, before we get into the story, I want to talk about the story. I want to talk about the miniseries and whether it's good or not. I did a fresh watch with my 33-year-old eyes, which is apropos because this is a quasi-religious story and Jesus was 33 when he died. So maybe this is what it's all coming to. I have had my Mother Abigail moment. I'm coming. I'm intersecting. Everything's lining up. We're headed there. We're getting there. And so I've had a fresh look, and I feel like I had more of a critical eye on it this time than I've ever had before. Because it kind of just would wash over me, for a long time. Well, let's just talk about the remaster. It looks really good. I mean, in comparison to the SD, it looks great. There's even a bonus feature on here that is like the original ABC, what would have aired probably around the time that the miniseries was about to go on, or had just premiered or something like that, where they would have showed it just as a little bonus thing for promotional, and it looks awful in retrospect, like in hindsight, and also when you juxtapose it to watching the restoration. They did a really good job. They cleaned up the movie really well, but it also still like kind of maintained that film quality. It's got that film grain kind of quality to it that I really, really appreciate it, because it sets it in the time and place it was made. It doesn't feel like a newer or modern movie. Like sometimes, even with like 4K, sometimes that's my gripe. It takes away some of the time capsule nature of these things sometimes when they go overboard with cleaning shit up. And I think they struck the right balance here. It does. It looks like a television show. It looks like a TV miniseries. Maybe slightly a little more filmic. That 16 millimeter, it's got that 16 millimeter edge, and I did like that. And I thought they did a good job with the color grading, and it really has never looked better. The level of detail is pretty high, considering that the entire 6 hours is on one Blu-ray. They didn't split it up into things, in parts or whatever, and so even considering that, it looks great. They did a great job. Probably not as good as the Next Generation one. That's probably the closest thing I would have to comparison, because they were kind of contemporarily made, or they were making them around the same time, and they would have used the same kind of techniques and whatnot. They went back just like they did with TNG, and they kind of touched up the special effects or redid some of them, and they look decent. Definitely look like they're from 1994. for sure. They're not going to be fooling anybody, because a nascent time in CGI, first of all, and second of all, it's just you could definitely see the limitations of the budget. Apparently, this was made for about 28 million, all said and done, which was a huge budget at the time. What a lot of people maybe don't realize about the Stand, like if you're younger, is that the Stand was like the birth of event television. It's kind of the precursor to what we have nowadays, because it was a fad for a long time. These Stephen King miniseries on ABC, I mean, they made a good amount of them. Everything had a miniseries up until like I'd say the mid 2000s. It was like Desperation. I think Tom Jane is in it, and what's his name? Hellboy, not David Harbour Hellboy. Ron Perlman, he was in it as well. So it's been kind of just it was almost like a tradition. Like every year or two, a Stephen King adaptation would come out. There's actually one that I would really like to revisit. I would really love it if they put it on Blu-ray. Maybe it is on Blu-ray. I don't know if I've ever checked. It's called Storm of the Century, and it was made specifically for TV. It's not based on a book or anything. He just wrote a teleplay, and they made it. And I can't remember if it's good. I used to love it when I was a kid. And the same thing with The Stand. The Stand was one of these things, just like I said. It's always been there. It's just always fucking been there. And I don't know. I just didn't know if it was good or not. Especially even relative to time. Because I'm good at that. I'm good at separating myself and being like, well, relative to the time it came out, you got to be fair to things. You got to be fair to stuff like that. And I just didn't know. So I wanted to get it again, but I thought $30 when it first came out, that was too much for me. Too rich for my blood. Too rich to take a gamble on. But recently, it's still on sale today. It might be if you check now. Amazon has it on sale for about $13. So if you're curious, I guess this would be the time to take a bite from that apple. $13. I can deal with that. I can deal with losing $13 if it ends up being an incredible disappointment. It's almost like something being a movie collector, sometimes you just buy things for posterity. You just buy things to have them in your collection. I would probably put The Stand in that category. I just kind of wanted to have it on the shelf. And now I don't know when the next time I'll revisit it, but I watched it. I watched it to do this review, and also because I was kind of excited. I got a little pumped. Kind of hard not to, because all those nostalgic feelings come flooding back. And just lately, just the way the world is right now with the pandemic, and this has kind of shades of that. Obviously, that's the Captain Trips pandemic is a little more serious, just slightly. And I was raised Catholic, so I have a lot of connections to things like this. And I remember even being a kid, and it was kind of like just fun or interesting to experience like this kind of quasi-religious kind of sideways tradition-based Christianity paradigm. Because this would be like what if you're when I was a kid, I was kind of a part of my Catholic upbringing, childhood was a little bit of a cultish. They were, we said, went to Latin mass. I was an altar boy, spoke in Latin. A little weird. But a lot of that stuff is wrapped in tradition. So things like the devil walking around on earth and demons and stuff, so those are things that people would talk about. So stories like this were pretty impactful to a young kid that grew up around that stuff. So it was both very entertaining, but also kind of terrifying when you're a kid. So it left a huge impression on me. But in terms of like just the product itself, just the remaster, I would say it's worth it for the remaster. If you've never seen it before, this is the way to do it. I was really kind of disappointed, though. I will say this because it is, going on this 26 years. It was the 25th anniversary when this was released. There is no new bonus features. There's an audio commentary that is actually from the old DVD release. So I already had the audio. I've already listened to the audio commentary, which is actually a pretty good audio commentary for a 6-hour story. It stays pretty engaging throughout. Because it's mostly Mick Garris and Stephen King, but other actors they came in probably just to watch their scenes. They pop in and out. There's some fun anecdotes. Seemed like it was a fun set, to be honest with you. Seemed like they kind of knew they were doing something cool. Like I said at the time, $28 million for a television production, a 6-hour miniseries. That was a big deal. And it also has that original making of that was also on the DVD. So they didn't really do anything. I wasn't looking for anything crazy, but it would have been cool to watch like a 30-minute retrospective or a Q&A, or you know what I mean? Just like organize something to put on the Blu-ray. Just to give us something a little bit more. Like, what do the actors think about, all these years later, about their time making The Stand? Because it's got a stacked cast. I would love to hear from some of these people again. I'd love to hear what Gary Sinise thinks about being in The Stand. It's funny, like Gary Sinise is one of those actors, like his character Stu, that is just kind of Gary Sinise. He just kind of is that dude. So it was good casting. Molly Ringwald. Oh, she's Molly Ringwald. What are you going to do? But it's got, James Sheridan, who plays Randall Flagg. A super underrated actor. I actually really like him in this. Randall Flagg, the character as presented in the miniseries, I have some problems with, but I really enjoy his performance for the most part. It's also got Miguel Ferrer, fucking awesome character actor. If you're a Twin Peaks fan, you'll know him from that. He's also been in a million other things. Isn't he in Blank Check? Is he the bad guy in Blank Check? I could be wrong. Could be misremembering. R.I.P., by the way. He passed away not too long ago from cancer, so that was a bummer. And Rob Lowe, Ossie Davis, Ruby D. Rob Lowe? I don't like Rob Lowe. I don't like him in this. I don't like that character at all. Oh, who's the guy who plays Larry? I like that. I feel like his performance in this. It grows on you over time. But anyway, so like I said, if you can get it for like, 10 or $15, I think it's totally worth the upgrade if you're still hanging on to those DVDs. Otherwise, I don't know why you'd buy it unless you were like me when I was a kid and I just randomly bought shit. If I had stumbled on this when I was like $14 and I saw it for $10, I probably would have bought it. So there you go. So let's talk about just the story itself. Is this miniseries good? Is it worth the shit? Like I said, it's hard. Got a lot of entanglements. Got a lot of mixed feelings about this. Because I was watching it, and like I kind of inferred before, it feels like it was made in 1994. And you got to just kind of accept that. If you can accept that, I think you're going to be okay. This was actually adapted by Stephen King himself. He adapted this for screen. He was a little bourbon for you. He was so stoked about how, quote unquote, well that the It miniseries turned out, that he was like, I'm going to do the fucking Stand. Because that was the first big Stephen King television thing, was It. And it was huge. People loved that thing. I have tons of nostalgic connections to It as well. That's another one. It, though, I can kind of say it's like, no, it is what it is. It's it is not aged well. I would say The Stand is probably aged a little bit better than It. Maybe a lot bit better, actually. Because I was still engaged. It's been probably close to a decade since I've actually watched this. Like, sat down, watched the whole thing all the way through. And I was definitely engaged the entire time. It does feel like it feels kind of quaint relative to today, for sure. But there's something kind of I appreciate about almost like the wistful innocence of something like this. It really does took me back to a time and a place, and that's why I have a hard time really saying whether it's good or bad. I'm going to err on the side of good, slightly, with all those caveats that I kind of mentioned. I don't think it's what I forgot, though. I will say this. I forgot what a slow burn it is, It's a cool thing, and it's kind of cool that they, back then, network television, they decided they were going to, they're doing this thing, but it takes so much time with the characters. just building up who they are as people. It really wants you to care about them. And I respected that. I appreciated it. It does feel it feels literary. It does not feel like a film adaptation. Like, I imagine if this was made as like a 3-part movie series, which I could totally see. I could totally see this as being like a trilogy, the Stand trilogy. Although I think CBS is doing a modern version for their streaming service, so we'll see how it turns out. But I really respected that. I respected that it's kind of patient. It's not really trying, some of those things are budgetary constraints. They can't really go all out on some stuff, but I think the substance of the book is intact. The spirit of it is intact. The characters do feel like the characters from the book, I would say, by and large. Randall Flagg, like I said before, I kind of had some problems with him. I wish there was more information about Randall Flagg, because he is like such a mysterious presence for such a large part of the miniseries. When they do reveal him, it almost doesn't add up. Like, he's kind of just like this I don't know. This lame honky tonk man, who's kind of a coward and kind of over the top in ways that were just it just didn't ring true. He's supposed to be this enigmatic figure, this wolf in sheep's clothing, and he's got all these people to kind of follow him, not just because he's like, the devil and he can hypnotize people or whatever. Some of it is just people's choice. I mean, that's the whole thing with good and evil. Some of it is just choice. You can't just psychically fuck people into one position or the other. And sometimes, towards the end, it kind of loses a little bit of credibility in terms of that. Although, having said that, I think that it is fair to point out that part of, if you were going to have like a devil character, part of his fatal flaw would have to be arrogance, would have to be hubris. And I get that. I do get that. I don't know if there's really a good way around doing that, I suppose, with that character. It's almost like one of those things, even though it's 6 hours long, probably could have used a little more Randall Flagg at some point. Like, if this was a television show, if it was a 12-episode television show, we would have got an episode or maybe 2 episodes, probably just one. We'll get a solid hour that's just about Randall Flagg, just about who he is, just about where he comes from. Because it's not super clear in the miniseries, like, is he like a demon from hell? Is he part man? What is his nature? What is his true nature? And, when I was growing up as a kid, I just was like, oh, he's the devil. And I thought it was cool because I've always liked Stephen King, like I said. So I've read a lot of his stuff. And Randall Flagg pops up all the time. Maybe in different visages. He looks different. But the spirit of the character shows up consistently throughout King's work. So he is like his Satan character that kind of is in the background pulling strings, and he's a big part of the Gunslinger series, the Dark Tower series. And it makes sense because that's like the big metafiction for Stephen King, so it makes sense that he would be there. What else? What else can I say about The Stand? I kind of enjoy the cheesy wholesomeness, like I said, that kind of that innocence of the time it was made, but it's also baked into the story. The story does have this kind of saccharine sentimentality, especially when it comes to, the ragtag group. I mean, that's what I always enjoyed about the book. One of the things I enjoyed about the book, and what I also appreciated in the miniseries, is that it does almost have like this fantasy vibe to it. It kind of almost feels like a Lord of the Rings-esque journey, You've got you got Sauron, you got the devil down in his tower down in Vegas, and you got this ragtag group of people, survivors, that are all kind of these archetypes. All have to overcome personal flaws, but they become like a band. Not like a band, like as a musical band. You know what I'm talking about. Don't be a dick. And like especially like in the miniseries, the last episode, the last part 4, is like Lord of the Ringsy kind of mission where they're kind of like the hobbits, and they're going towards they have to walk to Vegas. They have to go on this kind of spirit quest. For what reason, they don't really know. They don't know what they're going to do when they get there, but they just have to confront this evil. They have to, humanity as a collective has to stand up to evil, and they have to make an example of themselves. So, that's it's kind of powerful in its own weird way, Another thing that I forgot about The Stand in general is how kind of pro-American it is. Not in a jingoistic or a nationalistic kind of way, but it's just very like pro-American values. Even at the end of the miniseries, spoiler alert, these guys are about to be dismembered. They're on display for everybody. Randall Flagg reads this parchment saying like they will be killed by dismemberment, and all the people that joined Randall Flagg in Vegas are all there watching, the spectators. And there's a guy that was part of Randall's crew that was like, oh, this is going bad. I got to get the fuck out of here. But instead of leaving, he comes back and he kind of confronts him. He's like, we can't do this. We're Americans. We don't do this in America. And it was something I kind of had probably neglected, or maybe it was too naive or too immature to really see. But it's kind of seeded throughout the miniseries. Like there is this sense of Americana. There is this sense of having, that is kind of what the good guys are. They are their Western values personified. They do everything but wave around the American flag while they're walking, And I appreciated that, especially in such like polarized fucking times. And what I also appreciated about it is that it's not this binary, either you're good or you're evil. Like people can be saved. People can change their minds. That was like that guy who confronts Randall Flagg at the end and said, we're Americans. We don't do this. There is room for that, and these pilgrims, whatever you want to call them, the good guys, they are open to that. They're open to people changing their minds, and they want that. They're proselytizing in a sense. They're proselytizing. They're not proselytizing a religion specifically. They don't. I mean, obviously they talk about God, and there's the whole Mother Abigail angle. There's the whole Randall Flagg being the devil. It's obviously part of it, but the subtext of it is not that. They're not openly talking like, go to church, say your prayers, you'll be saved, accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior. They don't really do that. And I think it's more of just an integrity thing. It's more of just a values thing. And it's something I picked up on a lot over rewatching it the past few days, because I did not do a 6-hour marathon. I got a life. I got a 2-year-old kid. He's not going to let me sit around for 6 hours. And yeah. So overall, I really enjoyed the revisit. I'm saying that I err on the side of it being good versus bad, but I don't think it's great. I think in terms of an adaptation, I think Stephen King's, teleplay is largely successful, keeping the spirit of his work intact. And that's really all you can ask for when you come to like a television miniseries from 1994 based on, your epic, your Lord of the Rings book that is very adult. It's incredibly adult. And this, I was watching this, I was like, man, they got away with a few things in 1994. A little some heavy petting, some clothes on thrusting towards the end there between Nadine and Randall in the desert in the night. Yeah. A lot of good memories. I have a lot of good memories of just watching The Stand. I remember back when I was a kid, I saw it on television, and then it was put out on VHS. And my dad, every night when he would come home from work, he would bring a new tape home, and we all were rewatching it. And I remember it was like we were supposed to get the 4th tape the next night, and he comes home, he's like, somebody fucking rented it. What a different world, huh? What a different world. Somebody had already rented the tape, and we were fucked. We were not going to be seeing part 4 until Monday. Yeah, and it's things like that that are, that kind of it's so wrapped up in the actual quality of it. Whether I just enjoy it, I enjoy it, like and the older I get, and the more life experience I have, and having a kid and stuff, you kind of get softened a little bit on certain things. You get softened in sentimentality, not in your integrity as a person or what you have to do or the kind of values you stand for. Those things strengthen, but your sentimentality, your sense of appreciation for not better times, but simpler times, that come with being young, being younger, the beauty of the binary lifestyle of being a fucking young person. Um, so yeah, this is a big part of that. So for me, it's obviously I'm glad I bought it. Obviously, I didn't love it enough to get it at $30, but I'll do it at 13. I'll give you that. I'll give you that money, Mick Garris, you hack. Very nice man, though. Like I said, very nice man. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this review. I don't really got much else to say. This is one that I wish that like I had somebody that also was very familiar with it and we could talk about it. Because there's a lot to cover when it comes to the stand. There's a lot to cover with just the quality of the production. I mean, it was great for 1994. Very impressive stuff. Like those Mother Abigail visions. Some creepy shit, man. First time Randall Flagg shows up in the cornfield. I mean, come on. Makes blood come out of her hand. Oh, we have a friend in Jesus. Yeah, so totally. If you're a fan and you got your old crappy DVD rolling around, totally worth it. If you've never seen it before, it might be an interesting kind of portal to another time. I don't know if you're gonna get anything out of it in terms of it being like riveting television, but I enjoyed it. When I say I see this as a thing. Like I had to stop myself. I'm like I really liked it. I do, but I also understand objectively that it's kind of all close to being bad a little bit. There's some very questionable performances. There's some questionable pacing. You know, like I said, Mick Garris is a hack. He can't help himself. It's saccharine as fuck. I got a goddamn cavity after watching this movie. Sentimentality overload. If you're a really cynical person, man, you're gonna roll your eyes back so hard they're gonna get stuck in the back of your fucking head. That's all over this thing. And that's why I like it though. I like that. I just like this just the I like the sweetness of it. It's a dark story with kind of a positive, hopeful through line. I like that. Like I said, I'm getting old. Kids will ruin you, man. I used to be a very cynical person. Yeah, I'm still cynical about certain things, but not about my stand. Not about the Stephen King's The Stand. I wonder how ABC lost this shit. I wonder how this sold. I wonder how it sold. Are people just like frothing at the bit to revisit The Stand? I mean, I wasn't, and I was like, and I have very wistful feelings about it. And I wasn't frothing at the bit, not $30 at the bit. No, fucking no, no way. Yeah. Salute. All right. Well, that's going to do it for me, everybody. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. This was a very rambling one. But what are you going to do? That's just the way it goes sometimes. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys next time. I got another thing to review. I got some new 4Ks in the mail. Might actually some older titles. Probably give them a peek tomorrow. And I'll definitely do one video. There's one I'm definitely going to do. Sam Raimi. Maybe sort of classic. The Quick and the Dead. I have not seen it in a long time. And I got it for a steal. So I'm going to watch it. And we're going to see how it goes. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. All right. Shaun is out.